Good morning, everyone. Morning, everyone. Thank you. We are waiting on Jill. While we are waiting on Jill, just to give you a few room notes as we get ready to start the meeting. Because of our OpenGov system, there's some of you that we may not have met personally. So when we get to your item, if you would just indicate that you're in the room by raising your hand so that we know that. The second thing I would say is there's going to be an opportunity for you to come up to the microphone and speak on behalf. When you do that, if you would just state your name and your address into the microphone, that would be right. Well, thank you for being here this morning. We'll get started with the December 10th, 2025 License and Variance Board meeting. I'm Richard Garland. To my left is Eric's not with us that often. That's what I think that's what it is. You can never forget Andrew Worthy, Economic Director. We will make up the board that is hearing your request this morning. And with that, we'll get started. The first item on the agenda is a license, privileged license request, LIC 2025-043, existing alcohol license, owner agent change request, liquor, beer, wine, pouring, Sunday sales, 2728 Spring Road, Southeast Atlanta, Georgia, 30339, Applebee's Restaurant, Mid-Atlantic, LLC DBA Applebee's number 88049 with Christian D. Lambic as agent. Is Christian present? I will entertain a motion since he is absent, or entertain a motion to move this to the bottom of the agenda. We can come back to the meeting, give him an opportunity to arrive.
So motion.
We have a motion and a second to move item A. Vote. Passes. Second item on the agenda is LIC 2025-045, privileged license, existing alcohol license, owner agent change request, beer and wine, retail package and Sunday sales at 2175 Old Concord Road, Southeast, Suite A, Smyrna, Georgia 30080. Baba Deep Singh, LLP, doing business as Tienda El Milagro, Principal Singh Verk as agent. If you would step to the microphone, please, sir. Thank you for being here. If you'd state your name for the record.
Principal Singh Verk.
Thank you very much. You are requesting a pouring license, and what is your relation to the Tienda El Milagro? How are you involved in that restaurant?
It's not a restaurant, it's a convenience store.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you involved in that?
I just buy that, like, and my friend, he requirement like is good on business, so that's why I just.
So you work for the owner, you're not the
No,
owner?
I am the owner.
Oh, you are the
Yeah.
owner. Okay, okay. So you're the owner of the convenience store. How many hours a week are you spending in the convenience store?
I am probably over there like a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. What are the things that you have done to train your employees to prevent underage sales?
I always tell him like always check the ID and also no sell the on fake ID too, and also no sale on Sunday. 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. and always check the camera, no stealing, and outside everything okay. That-
Do you have a training program for your employees that are working in the convenience store? Or is
No, yeah,
you're doing that, you're
Yeah.
doing all that training? Okay, okay. Can you talk about what kind of security system you have to be able to monitor?
I have cameras, and I have a security system for ring, like associate ring. So when someone broke, and then they have alarm.
Okay. What experience do you have in managing facilities with alcohol sales? Is this the first time that you've done this, or have you done this in other places?
No, I also work California before. I work on 7-Eleven, so long time ago, and then I just work on it.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah.
How long are those recordings kept?
Is 180 days. Yeah. Sorry?
A training program for your
No,
employees?
yeah, I'm going through. Yeah. Yeah. A new business is like I buy the one stumber one. So yeah.
Are you open for business yet, or when will you
I already open.
open?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I do need to let you know, in the city of Smyrna, alcohol sales is something that we take seriously. We ask our police force to monitor this, and they do an excellent job, whether that's through Secret Shopper or through sting operations, to ensure that we are not dealing with underage sales. So be expecting those kinds of visits, because they will be coming to see you. And we like to make sure everybody knows that going up front. This is a serious endeavor, and we want to make sure that everybody understands that. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve license 2025-045, a privileged license for an existing alcohol license, owner-agent change request for beer and wine, retail package and Sunday sales at 2175 Old Concord Road, Suite A, Smyrna, Georgia, 30080. Baba Ding Singh LLC, doing business as Tienda El Milagro, Principal Singh Verk as the agent.
We have a
a
motion. Do we
second.
have a second? And we have a second. Passes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item C on the agenda is a public hearing for variance request V25-0100, allow secondary accessory structure on land lot 485 at 3240 King Springs Road. William Cope is the applicant. Thank you, sir. Ms. Crow, would you give us the background on this request, please?
Yes, let me just move this. We have it large and in charge this morning. So, all right. Well, good morning. Caitlin Crow, Land Development Services Coordinator for Community Development. I do kind of want to reiterate as well to my applicants is we do have quite a long agenda this morning. So once the items have been heard and voted on by you, the board, they are more than welcome to leave. So just want to make sure everybody is understanding they do not have to stay. unless, of course, they choose to. So as you just mentioned, this is Variance V25-100 to allow for a second accessory structure. So this property is currently on the west side of King Springs Road, which is in the Cottages of King Springs subdivision. So the current property is occupied by a 2-story single-family home, as well as a shed and a pool in the rear yard. So the pool was actually permitted back in 2020, and at the time, the pool company had submitted plans that showed that the shed would be removed to avoid a variance for a second accessory structure. Unfortunately, the shed was not removed at the time, and the pool has been in use since that time. The applicant then submitted for a new building permit, and at the time of plan review, it was determined that the shed and pool were still existing on the property, and thus we did require this variance to bring them into compliance. As soon as the applicant was alerted, he immediately submitted for this variance application, and thus we are presenting it for you today. So the applicant is proposing, of course, to retain both the shed and the pool on the property. They both offer different uses on the property. The shed is used for storage, whereas the pool is more for recreation. So thus the hardship is not self-created. After reviewing this variance application, staff is supportive of the request and does recommend your approval of this request without any stipulations. And I can answer any questions. All right, thank you.
How are you doing this morning?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. If you would just state your name and your address for the record, please.
William Cope, 3240 King Springs,
And your relationship to this property is that you are the owner of
the owner,
the property?
since 17.
Have anything else that you'd like to add to what Ms. Crow
No.
offered? All right.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone present who'd like to speak for or against this variance request, you may do so at this time. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve V25-100, a variance request to allow a second accessory structure on land lot 485 at 3240 King Springs Road, William Cope as the applicant.
Second, please vote. Sir. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for variance request V25-0-104, reduce the front setback for a shed on land lot 417 at 892 Wayland Court. Igor's Stefanovs. Ms. Crow, could we get the background on this, please?
Yes, thank you. Again, Caitlin Crow, Community Development. So we actually have two variances on this property. I will go ahead and read them together just to keep this a little bit shorter, but as you know, you will vote on them separately. So the first variance that you just mentioned was V25-104 to reduce the front setback for a shed. The second variance will be V25-105, and that is to reduce the western side setback from 10 feet to 5 feet. So this property actually obtained this new shed back in October 2025, unfortunately without any of the required permits or variances. So the shed is there currently on the property. Once alerted to these violations, the applicant did pretty quickly submit for this variance application. So the existing home is on a corner lot, and it sits catty corner to the property lines over there on both Wayland Court and Francis Drive. So there was an existing shed there previously that was smaller than 200 feet, which don't require permits, and was in both the front and side setbacks. However, back again in October, the applicant did replace that shed with a larger shed that was now further encroaching into both. Because there was a shed there before, once it's replaced with something larger and more expansive, per section 1102, it does require to come in and get variances if they would like to keep it in the same location. However, this shed is, again, much larger than what was there before. Due to the kind of property geometries of this property and the next one on Francis Drive, the shed now appears to be in the front yard of the neighboring property, just due to those site distances. Thus, staff are not supportive of the first variance for allowing this to encroach into the front setback. Additionally, the property is too close to that side property line on the adjacent neighbor as well, which means that the shed is now less than 10 feet from the other building. Per fire code, that would require a fire suppression system in this shed. So to avoid an unnecessary sprinkler system, they are going to move it to be at least 5 feet from the side property line. Staff is supportive of this request as long as it is moved. So just to reiterate, is the first variance we are recommending either denial or being withdrawn. The applicant has alluded to the fact that they will be moving the shed, but we haven't had recent verification of that. So again, denial or withdrawn for that first request, and we are supportive of the side setback if it is moved. So after reviewing the variance application, staff is supportive of the second request and does recommend your approval with the following conditions. The first, the shed shall be moved out of the front setback and at least 5 feet from the western side property line within 30 days of variance approval. And number two, a permit for the shed must be acquired within 60 days of variance approval. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Okay. I would like to ask this question.
Yes.
In 14.9 feet in doesn't have any relevance other than the fact that that's as far as he says. Move it that far, he only has to move it 5 feet.
No, so there's actually for both variances. So the 14.9 is for the front setback. He can move it further than that, of course, but the 14.9 would take it out of the front setback. The 5 feet is for the side setback and must be moved at least to the 5-foot side property line. It's actually about 2.5 feet from the side right now, so he's not moving it an additional 5 feet, it's just 5 feet at a minimum.
So in the conditions that you have put on this variance 105, about the 14.9 feet, or that's not necessary?
I have, when I wrote the stipulation, it was that it would be moved out of the front setback, which would accommodate that 14.9. But yeah, if you would like to reword that for any clarity, feel free to do so.
All right. Okay, any other questions?
So the new shed is it's 211 square feet. Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Stefanos. How are you doing this morning?
How you doing? My name's Igor Stepanov, 892 Wayland Court.
Okay, let's talk about the request 104, which is to reduce the front setback of the shed. As you heard Ms. Crow state, the staff is not supportive of this request, and I think in our previous discussions related to this, we would not be supportive of the request to give you a variance on the front setback. As stated, conversation about moving the shed. Are you still in agreement with moving the shed?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I have a second to say something?
Sure.
So the shed isn't 211 square feet. It's a 20 by 10, which is 200 square feet. And the prior shed was actually closer to the driveway and the neighbor's back fence. So I actually moved it some away from Francis and my neighbors, but it's still encroaching apparently. But I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to have it approved.
Okay, so if you're willing to move the shed, then we can withdraw the first request. The variance request for the reducing the front setback. We can just take that off of the, we don't have to act, well, we have to act on it to remove it, but we don't have to act on it or approve it because you're agreeing to move. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so if you'll hang with us for just a second. I'll entertain a motion on variance request V25-0104, reduce the front setback for a shed on land lot 417-892 to be withdrawn from the consideration.
A second.
Motion and a second. Please vote on that.
So just to clarify, it should be 35 feet from the front and 5 feet from the neighbors? Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So here's where we are. We're at variance request V25-0105, which is to reduce the western side setback from 10 feet to 5 feet on land lot 417 at 892 Wayland Court. You're still the owner of that property.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Crow, you've already given us the background on this. Is there any additional information that we need to have related to variance request 105?
No, but just to clarify, just so you know, we do include that landing in that 211 square feet, and that's where the additional square footage came from, but you're good.
Thank you.
All right. So in relation to this, you understand that the stipulations are that the shed should be moved away from the front setback and at least 5 feet from the western side of the property line within 30 days of the variance approval.
Yes.
Permit for the shed must be acquired within 60 days of the
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to add on that? Any questions you have of us? Do we have any questions of the owner?
I do not, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this variance request, you may do so at this time. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. That motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-106, reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 18.8 feet on land lot 560 at 2812 Walker Court. Ronald Waddell is the owner. Thank you, sir. Ms. Crow, could we have the background on this request, please?
Great. Thank you again, Caitlin Crow, Community Development. So just like the previous request, this will have two variances to it. So again, I'll read them together and then you'll vote on them separately. So the first request is V25-106 to reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 18.8 feet. And the second variance is V25-107 to reduce the northern side setback from 10 feet to 3.5 feet. So this subject parcel is located on the west side of Walker Court, and the applicant is looking to renovate the existing home. So that current home has been there since 1951, which is prior to our existing zoning ordinance from 1976, and it currently encroaches into both the side setback and the front setback. As part of the renovation, the applicant is looking to enlarge and enclose their existing carport, as well as add a front porch to the front. There are some other renovations that will be happening to the rear of the property, but those do not require any variances. So again, just like the previous variances, although the home is currently encroaching into the front and side setbacks, they're expanding that condition and encroaching even further than it exists today. Thus, again, because of Section 1102, we do require a variance to bring it into conformance with our current code. So again, the previous code was from home was from 1951 with our ordinance from 1976. With these renovations, anything into those setbacks would have required this variance, and thus the hardship is not self-created. In addition, the existing house is a little under 2,000 square feet currently. With these additions, they will actually meet the R15 minimum floor area requirement of 2,000 square feet. So they are bringing the house further into compliance in that way. Since the northern section of this porch will be encroaching further or closer than 5 feet to that side property line, they will be required to bring any section within that 5 feet up to fire retardant standards, whether that be with paint or a different method, which will be discussed with the chief building official. Additionally, similar variances have actually been requested and approved in the nearby area, at 2804 Walker Court in 2018, and then also at 2790 Walker Court back in 2020. So there's a precedence for these types of variances in the immediate neighborhood. After reviewing the request, staff is supportive of both and does recommend your approval with the following 3 stipulations. The first is our standard stipulation. Approval of the variance request is conditioned upon substantial compliance with the site plan and elevations submitted with the variance application. Number 2, gutters and downspouts shall be installed to divert stormwater away from adjacent properties. This is because of the proximity to that side property line. And then number 3, any portion of the northern porch that encroaches closer than 5 feet to the side property line must be painted with fire retardant paint or as deemed necessary by the chief building official. And as always, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Crowe?
All right, thank you.
Waddell?
Good morning, y'all. Hi, Brian Waddell.
You have heard the background that Ms. Crowe's provided. Is there anything you'd like to add to that background?
That was pretty thorough. I don't know if y'all had any questions for me, though.
You are the owner of the property?
Yes.
How many years have you been at the property?
Since '94.
We're going to take these one at a time. You can stay close if you want to.
Oh, sure. I'm just glad you didn't ask me to repeat what she said.
This is a public hearing, and if you'll just sit right there on that front row, because this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this request, please do so at this time. Hearing none, we will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve V25-106, reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 18.8 feet in land lot 560 at 2812 Walker Court. Ronald Waddell, the applicant.
A second, please vote. Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-107, reduce the northern side setback from 10 feet to 3.5 feet on 560 at 2812 Walker Court. Ronald Waddell is still the owner of that property. Ms. Crowe, is there anything else you'd like to add for this request?
Not at this time.
Mr. Waddell, is there anything you'd like to add related to this request? No, sir. Questions for either Ms. Crowe or the owner? This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this request, please do so at this time. Mr. Waddell, I got a look from Ms. Crowe, which reminds me that I did not ask you that you understood the stipulations on this as far as the approved variance request, substantial compliance with the plans, gutters and downspouts, and third, that you need to use the fire retardant paint.
That's correct. Yes, sir. We're aware of that. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I saw that. Hearing no public input, we will entertain a motion at this time.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-108, allow new construction on lot of record below minimum requirements on land lot 453 at 956 Sharon Circle. Harold Shoemaker is the applicant. Ms. Crowe, could we have the background on this, please?
Yes, all right. Caitlin Crowe, Community Development. So, as you just read out, this is V25-108 to allow new construction on a lot of record below minimum requirements. So this parcel is located on the south side of Sharon Circle, which is on the southern side of Sharon Circle and Ridgecrest Road. So the subject parcel is part of the Smyrna Heights subdivision, which was platted back in 1951, which, just like the previous variance, is prior to our current zoning ordinance from 1976. So the applicant is fully renovating this property and actually adding more than 50% square footage to this property with a new 2-car attached carport, new front porch, back porch, as well as a second floor addition. Because it is going to bring it so far into the new home, zoning code is requiring it as a new home. Section 1102 does require that any homes that are underneath the lot area are required to come forth for a variance prior to a new home. Unfortunately, this lot is just under that required 15,000 square feet at 14,763 square feet, which is where this variance is originating. This home is currently 962 square feet, which is far below the standards for our 15 floor area of 2,000 square feet. Once the home is completed, it'll be over 2,500 square feet, which also brings it into compliance with the R15 zoning district. Because this hardship is not self-created, the plat, again, was done in 1951 prior to 1976 for a zoning ordinance. Staff is supportive of this request. We do recommend your approval with the following 3 stipulations. The first is our standard. Approval of the requested variance is conditioned upon substantial compliance with the site plan and elevations submitted with the variance application. Number 2, an as-built survey shall be submitted prior to the foundation pour due to the proximity of the setbacks. And number 3, any damaged or broken curb during construction shall be replaced prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Crowe? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Shoemaker. I'm sorry.
Hello, Harold Shoemaker, 3233 Millwood Trail.
Crowe
I did.
provided. Anything you'd like to add to that?
None at all.
You tell the board what's your relation to this property?
I'm the licensed general contractor on the property.
Questions for the owner?
Thank you.
Maker? All kinds of people telling me what to do. There are 3 conditions. You understand those 3 conditions? Thank you. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this variance request, please do so at this time. Hearing none, we will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve V25-108, a variance request to allow new construction on a lot of record below minimum requirements in land lot 453 at 956 Sharon Circle. Harold Shoemaker, the applicant.
Second, please vote. Carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-012, reduce the eastern side setback from 10 feet to 8.7 feet on land lot 486 at 1181 Midland Street. Harold Shoemaker is the applicant. Ms. Crowe, the background on this, please.
Yes, Caitlin Crowe, Community Development. So V25-112 to reduce the eastern side setback from 10 feet to 8.7 feet. It's for a property located on the northern side of Medland Street, near the intersection of Medland Street and Nickel Street. So this property actually came before you as the board back in May earlier this year to allow for new construction on a substandard lot. So this is a brand new house that is on the property with a building permit that was also issued earlier this year. So once the house was already under construction, a buyer came in who was looking to add an addition to the property. So the addition would include a storage area in the front, a home gym, as well as a golf simulator in the rear. The golf simulator is really what's driving the width requirement for this, as this is what's recommended for golf simulators. However, this lot is a standard lot. It did have to come before the board for that substandard lot because it is underneath that 15,000 requirement. However, at the street, the 85 feet is what's required for our 15 lots for the street width, and this is actually at 89. So there are no constraints with the 10-foot side setbacks on either side of this property that would be of any abnormality for an R15 lot. Additionally, if this house had been moved over just about 2 feet, the variance would not be required. Thus, staff do not feel that there is any hardships on this property that is requiring for this addition to be on the property. Additionally, since there is no driveway requirements or anything similar, there's no reason that this could not be moved elsewhere on the property. So after reviewing the variance request, staff does recommend denial of this request. And I can answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Crowe?
Okay, thank you.
Harold Shoemaker, 3233 Millwood Trail.
Director on this
I am the
property
general
too.
contractor and owner and builder.
Okay.
So I bought these properties approximately 2 years ago. And it had two structures, one on each property. And after going round and round, we decided ultimately, instead of renovating, that we were going to tear them down and build new construction. We had built similarly behind the fire station. And it was well received in the price point we were doing, the style of house we were building, so we opted to do that to these two properties. Once we went under construction, the property on the right, 1191, went under contract almost immediately. 1181, which is this subject property, went under contract back in October. The family that we're under contract with is a young professional family who lives in the community currently, looking to upgrade, stay in the community. With the time that they put a contract in, they were not pregnant. They recently found out they're expecting. So for them, as they've looked at this space, it's sort of evolving. At first, it was something more for themselves, and now they're thinking of something long-term for a family as they expand their family. So the properties, when we developed the properties, I know that Caitlin mentioned that we could have slid the property 2 feet to the left. Originally, when we looked at the development of the property, the house was centered. Both houses were actually centered more onto the property. And then thinking long-term about what would somebody want in this price point, many times you find 3-car garages. We weren't willing to build it at this time, but we felt that to accomplish that, we'd push the properties over to the left, or push the house structure over to the left, so we could do a 12-foot garage, which was more than adequate space for a garage at the time, and they wouldn't need a variance to go through that. So that's why there's still some space to the left. We weren't anticipating anything more than a garage. Since then, when the buyers came on board with us, one of the things they were hesitant about the house was the fact that it didn't have a basement. Again, they were looking for something as they were growing their family and starting a family that they could expand into and have space to grow and finish in the future. So that was what came about. Was a conversation was, well, hey, we've got this garage space that we had initially intended. We could obviously develop that if we needed to into living space. And as conversations came about, there were conversations about, well, could we place it other places on the property? Could it go to the back left corner? But the problem with that is that we've got a bedroom in that area, so we need the window structure there to maintain the bedroom. Then we said, well, how about if we go out the back? The back of the structure, if you have the plans, has I guess, covered patio that's about 12 by 16, fireplace and so forth in it. So it doesn't really make sense to go out the back of it and then enclose the living space, because the living room sits there off of it. And then sort of as we talked about developing behind the right side, again, that sort of becomes part of the kitchen, eat-in kitchen area. And again, you've got windows there, so now you would sort of landlock a kitchen area. And they expressed that long-term they'd like to develop a pool as they have kids and stuff. So we're trying to take all of that into consideration as we're looking at how this new space is going to fit on the lot. Originally, when, as they said, they were designing based on a golf simulator, the minimum requirements are 12 feet. We tried to get a little bit more space so you can move around it and some of those things. But as we look at now our conversations recently in the last 2 weeks since they found out they were pregnant was, how do we make that space flex long-term? So maybe they get what they want today, but as they have kids, and anybody who's got teenagers, knows that they want their own space and be able to provide them someplace to go. We look at, does that space work with them? 12 foot wide is a fairly narrow space, especially in a house of that size and structure. And you're talking 12 foot by 40 feet. So it sort of creates a bowling alley effect to the property. And we've talked about, long-term, could that be subdivided and what that would be subdivided? And again, when you look at a 12-foot wide room, that seems very narrow for what, an open entertainment space would be. So they've asked me to come plead their case to the board and say that, this is something that they feel that would really meet their requirements, not just today for what they want, but long-term as they grow their family. I also had a conversation, the buyer's agent on this is a gentleman, Nick Vincent, who's been in front of this board several times, builds in this area. He just had, in the last, I think, 60 days, another variance approved on a property. The property is located at 3357 Pre-Branch Drive. That property is zoned differently. It is zoned R20, so the setbacks are a little different, but they're building a ranch house on that property, and they got a variance to move that side setback from the 12-foot R20 down to the 8-foot. So more than a third of the setback was allowed, 30-something%. And in conversations with him, you know, I was asking him how that came about, what his hardship was, and why it was approved. And he said, well, I don't know. I've not had anything not approved moving into the setback. So, you know, we looked at it, and even a conversation this morning with him, you know, and talking about the structure that he's building on that property, as he said to me, well, I could have easily moved that 4 feet to the right. It just made sense for the property. So as I look at some of these variance applications, I say, what makes sense? You know, I don't feel it's just the hardship that's created. I think that, you know, a couple things I look at. Does it make sense for the property? Does it make sense for the house? Does it make sense for the lot in the community? And does it work? You know, I think the objective is that we not only build something that works today, but that it's going to work in the future for the buyers and any future owners. I've also got another variance that, again, as I look at precedents out there for an approval, at 2098, this is a variance that I was involved in as the general contractor. This, again, is in the last 90 days or so. This is a property that the original setbacks when the property was built was 30 feet. It was a non-conforming lot that we were building on, so we were taking those setbacks to 35. The structure of the entire property, current structure, fit within that 35-foot setback, except for a small piece to the left side of a deck. In our variance application, we actually requested to move the front setback, and it is an oblong-shaped lot. It's sort of a pie shape. We're pushing that setback in the front from 35 feet to, I believe it's 28 feet 4 inches. So we expanded substantially into the setback there. And again, as I look at that, we talk about, and I hear a lot from planning department that, is it a hardship? Is it self-created? You know, and that's a hardship we clearly self-created because that just worked best for the house and best for the owner. And again, that was approved at that time, and we went well into the setback there. And again, that's a case where, just as being said to us now, well, stay within the setback and work within that they could have easily said, hey, stay within the setback, work with that, push that house back that 10, 11 feet that you need to, because there's actually space on the back of that lot that would have accommodated that. So I just feel that there's precedence out there to approve this, and I just feel that as I look at the whole project, it just makes sense that it's prudent. The house next to it does sit 20 feet off that property line. This house would then move to 8'7" off the property line. There's still plenty of space in between those two properties, so they look very well separated. And from the street, I think it'll look appropriate within context. So that's really all I have. I know that the buyers were trying to be here, but they work for Home Depot and were involved in corporate meetings and didn't know if they'd be able to make it, and apparently they're not.
All right, any questions?
Other cases that had variances.
I did, and those are just ones I'm involved of or know of directly.
I'm not familiar with those cases.
Sure. Sure, absolutely.
A variance for a side setback was granted on this other case over here. Other variance cases reflect this same. A new home was built,
Yes.
and then coming back after the fact to say, we're changing our permit.
Right.
Something that, as you described, sounds to me as kind of a moving target. We think we want it now for a golf simulator, but we might want it for a child bedroom.
Sure. So, and I agree. So none of them are of that. So all of them got approval when they were in the initial development stage. So pretty branch, in other words, they went back and forth with Caitlin and the department about how that was going to work and where that was going to be. So they were granted that variance and that side setback upon initial approval. And again, I think right now I'm sort of Monday morning quarterbacking this. If I knew then what I know now, we would have happily moved it over 2 feet. Part of why I didn't want to move it over originally and put it to that setback line is that I am in negotiations with the owner of the property adjacent to that. It's on Love Street. And we're supposed to talk yet again today and hopefully finalize a contract. And when we do, I will develop Love Street, that property onto Medlin Street. Property will sit adjacent to that. So I was thinking sort of long-term, when I do this, you know, I want to create proper separation and not impact that lot either as a future development. When you talk about a moving target, it is. I mean, again, today, the initial concept today, you know, when we executed our contract with them back in October, it was simply as a recreational flex space, 100%. You know, for them, their world changed when they found out they were expecting, and now that puts into motion, okay, what will we do with this long term, and how will this impact us long term? There's 5 bedrooms.
This extra space, there's 5 bedrooms.
There is. It's a substantial house. It's 4,200 square feet, 5 bedroom, 5 bath. I don't think for them that's going to be any type of living space. For them, that will be recreational space, no matter what it is in the future, whether it's, you know, home gyms and golf simulators or whether it's just kids' play areas and that kind of stuff. That's the challenge to the house, is that because it doesn't have a basement, they really don't have a place to say to the kids, hey, go play long term. And that was sort of a prerequisite when they looked at the house, and that their one negative on the house, they actually live in that subdivision farther back, so they were watching these properties get torn down and built every day and would stop by and, you know, sort of look at them. And
The width of that room that you are proposing is 12 feet?
So we have approximately, and I'm speaking out of turn, I think it's 12 feet 9 inches from the edge of the current structure to the setback line. We are proposing that that room be 14 feet. So that would extend us to 1'3" or 1'4" into the setback. So it would take our setback from 10 foot to 8'7", I believe is what it is.
Use that to reduce the size of that to avoid the need for variance.
No. So, you know, that was part of our conversations, obviously, is, hey, we can do this without a variance. And it can be 12 feet, 2 or 3 inches on the inside. And, you know, again, they said, well, here's what we want to do today. You know, does it work? And in an ideal world, it doesn't quite work. 14 feet would make it work. And I said, well, I can't do 14 feet without going to get a variance. And they said, well, you know, what does that involve? And I said, you know, and I explained the process. And they said, then absolutely, we want to do it. We feel strongly that, you know, this is what we need to place on the property. If we're going to spend the money, because this is an upcharge to them, this is an addition to the contract. So they felt if we're going to spend this money, we want to make sure we're getting what we want on the property.
In your mind, what are the alternatives if we do not?
The only alternative I truly have is to build that directly, you know, maintaining the current setback. So that'll take the structure to about 12 feet, 1 or 2 inches on the inside of it.
Structure on the side of the house and not looking at alternate.
Well, we've looked at the alternates, and I think, you know, as I explained earlier, the left side has a bedroom. It's got a window out the back. I can't really go there, and there's no way to access it from internal part of the house. The back, again, long-term, they're thinking pool. We also have directly off the back, we have a covered patio that's got space heaters and, you know, fireplace. So that doesn't really work for them. And again, they want to look long-term and think long-term with family, with pool, you know, about a pool. So that doesn't do it. So that now leaves us sort of the back right of the property. And again, you know, as we looked at that and we talked about that, the eat-in breakfast area is right there. It's got a 12-foot wide window that sits there, so there's a lot of light that comes in. So if you built that structure in that area, then now you've got an internal breakfast area and kitchen. So your breakfast area and kitchen don't really see light except for the family room, which has a large sliding, 16-foot sliding door in it. So there is light in that area, but from your actual kitchen and breakfast area, you wouldn't, because there would now be a structure there. Also, we can't quite get the depth of the structure we needed there because we've got a 30-foot setback, and we're currently about 30 feet. So even if we go wider, we can't get the 40 feet-ish that they're looking for. So really what we've determined is the only area to build that makes sense for them is that right side of the property. So then the question really becomes, can we encroach into the setback or not?
Okay. Questions? Sir.
Great, thank you.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this request, please do so at this time. Hearing none, we will entertain a motion.
Awful lot going on to a property that's already substandard. I do not question to clients' desire for the house and all their amenities, but is this the right place for them to move on?
Sure.
I rely on, I think we all rely on our planning staff to look not only what's right for the property, but what's right for the community.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Vote. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is variance request dash V25-113, allows secondary accessory structure on land lot 450 at 965 Church Street. Peter Moken is the applicant. Further background, please.
All right, Caitlin Crow, Community Development. So variance V25-113 to allow for a second accessory structure is located on a lot on the north side of Church Street. So this property is currently occupied by a one-story single-family home and a shed that is in the rear of the lot. Per historic aerials, the shed has existed on the property since 1999, and the applicant is looking to retain that, but also build a new in-ground swimming pool. So this is similar to a variance we heard earlier this morning, where that is considered two accessory structures. Each lot is allowed one accessory structure, but again, because the uses are different, the shed will be used for garden tool storage and the pool for recreational use. They are two different uses, and thus the hardship is not self-created. So due to the location of both the pool and the shed in the rear of the yard, it really won't be visible from the public right-of-way. Additionally, as part of pool permits, they do require a fence to be built around them. So a 6-foot wooden privacy fence will also be erected that will also help shield both from the public right-of-way. So after reviewing this variance application, staff is supportive of the request and does recommend your approval with just the standard condition. Approval of the requested variance is conditioned upon substantial compliance with the site plan submitted with the variance application. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Crow?
All right, thank you.
I'm Jacob King. I'm a representative of Peter Moken's company that's contracting. Like Ms. Crow had said, that shed, it takes up like 124 square feet of impervious surface. So even adding that pool area, we're still going to be only at 20% lot coverage, counting everything. So we still have 15% from the maximum allowed. And with our plan, we also have drainage included to make sure that the stormwater is managed properly. And the distance between the pool and the shed will be substantial due to the property size.
Up in there. So they did not require a mitigation plan. This is just something that they have chosen to do for the property, but because it is not required and they are not near their impervious surface limit, that is not required.
Contractor.
Yes, sir. So I'm the sales and design, and then Peter Moken's owner of the company.
Stipulation on this? You understand the stipulation?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak against this variance request, please do so at this time.
Motion to approve V25-113, a variance request to allow a second accessory structure at land lot 450 at 965 Church Street, Peter Moken, the applicant.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Next item on the agenda is a series of 4 variance requests on the same piece of property. We'll take them one at a time. Variance request V25-116 is at 2809 Sherwood Road to increase the maximum impervious surface area. I'm sorry. Variance request V25-116, allow more than 25% of impervious coverage in the front yard, land lot 344 at 2809 Sherwood Road. Murphy is the applicant. Ms. Crow, could we get the background on this, please?
Yes, Caitlin Crow, Community Development. So, as you mentioned, there will be 4 variances as part of this request. The first being V25-116 to allow more than 25% impervious coverage in the front yard. The next one will be V25-117 to reduce the southern side setback from 10 feet to 9 feet. Then we have V25-118 to increase the maximum impervious surface area from 35% to 53.2%. And then finally V25-119 to reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 25 feet. So this subject parcel is located on the east side of Sherwood Road in the Concord Estates subdivision. So this property has a bit of history behind it. Back in sometime around 2022, the property added additional impervious surface area in the front yard with a driveway that unfortunately was done without the proper variances at that time. Additionally, at that same time, a carport was added to the front of the property that also was in that front setback, again, without any proper permits or variances. Fast forward to April 2025, the applicant did start installing a detached garage or shed in the rear yard, again, without any permits or variances, and extended the driveway and making essentially a circular driveway in the front yard. So code enforcement was called out there and did put violations on the property. A permit was submitted at that time in April, but it did not move forward until eventually the applicant did submit for their variance request in November of this year. So all that being said is the property has undergone quite a few renovations over the years. So it's currently a 1-story house with a 590 square foot accessory structure on the southeastern side of the property. The applicant is looking to retain that accessory structure as well as retain the majority of the improvements that have been made since 2022. The structure is to be used just for storage only and is not going to be used as an accessory dwelling unit, and that is per interior photos of this shed. So the garage expansion also, again, is what led to that driveway being added. As part of the application, the staff is looking, or excuse me, not the staff, the applicant is looking to remove some of that concrete in between the two driveways as well as on the southern side of the property to try and bring down the amount of, or the extent of the variances that are being requested. However, even with the demolished concrete, they are still both over that 25% impervious in the front yard and over the maximum for the overall lot. With the expanded driveway, again, because of that impervious surface increase, they were required to create a mitigation plan in conjunction with this request. They are looking to put an infiltration pit in the rear of the yard, and the engineering staff have reviewed this application and are supportive of the method used. However, they will be required to do a stormwater inspection and maintenance agreement as part of this request to maintain that pit in the rear yard. So this property, because of these requests, is still over that impervious surface area, more so than what staff would typically see on the property. So staff is recommending approval only with one of the stipulations, which I'll read in its totality later on, but kind of mention it now. Is there's a concrete walkway on the north side of the home that extends to the rear that staff are requiring to be removed as well as part of this variance application. This will bring it much more in line with the allowable 35% for impervious surface area. It still will be over, but just like a few of the other variances earlier today, this is a substandard lot and is beneath the required 15,000 square feet. So thus, when you look at it as if it was a 15,000, again, it's just over the 35%. So thus, staff would then be supportive at that time. And that is specific to the variance request for the impervious surface area. We would also like to note that we have had neighbors reach out about this property in opposition to the requests concerning the impervious coverage. So please just note that the community has also been made aware of these violations. So all that being said, if that stipulation is met and if that additional concrete is removed from the property, staff can support all 4 variances. If the applicant unfortunately cannot agree to that additional concrete removal, staff would have to recommend denial for the impervious surface area variance. So that being said, if we are to move forward with the recommendation for approval for all 4, we do have 6 stipulations on this property. First is our standard. Approval of the requested variance is conditioned upon substantial compliance with the site plan and elevations submitted with the variance application. Number 2, a permit for the accessory structure and carport must be acquired within 30 days of variance approval. Number 3, and this is the key one here, the driveway sections called out to be removed on the site plan must be removed prior to the issuance of the certificate of completion. Now that part of it was what they had already proposed on their plan. The second part of this is, additionally, the concrete sidewalk along the left side and rear of the house, with the exception of a 3x3 foot landing at the bottom of the stairs, shall be removed prior to issuance of the certificate of completion. That section was shown in your memo that you received as figure 3. Number 4, a stormwater inspection and maintenance agreement shall be completed and recorded with the Cobb County Superior Court prior to issuance of the building permit. Number 5, a stormwater as-built certification statement shall be submitted to community development for approval prior to issuance of the certificate of completion. And number 6, the accessory structure shall not be rented or occupied for gain except as permitted in Chapter 22 as it pertains to the operation of short-term rental units. Now, because of these requests, I do have a couple people here today if you have any additional needs or questions. We have Clara Hodges here from the engineering department if you have questions about the impervious surface area or mitigation method, although Sean Murphy, the applicant, is more than qualified to be able to answer those considering he created the plan. And then I also have Melissa Gonzalez here from City Hall who can provide any translation services in Spanish if the applicant needs that. So with that, is there any questions for staff?
All right, as we go through these, 116 is to allow more than 25% of the impervious coverage in the front yard. That is taken into consideration still be,
That is correct. So, and thank you for pointing that out. So I do want to clarify. So the section of concrete that the applicant has already said that they are proposing in their plan is accounted for in this first variance. And yes, it is still above, it's over 40% still in that front yard. But I do want to point out that the additional concrete that staff is requiring is outside of that front setback and thus outside of the front yard, and will not affect the calculation for that impervious coverage specifically in the front yard.
that one we'll speak to more directly.
That is correct, yes.
Focus on 116. 116 is to allow more than 25%. Front carport.
Correct.
However, I have a question, point of clarification, but the 6 stipulations you mentioned you're recommending to go with every one of those. So even though it's not that one particular stipulation that staff is asking for, it does not pertain to that particular one in 115 or 116. You're requesting that to be part of all of those.
That is correct. So these stipulations it's for the entire property. However, if the applicant determines that that's just not feasible for whatever reason that they can tell you, to not remove the additional concrete, you as the board do have the ability to amend these stipulations as you see fit. So if for some reason we do want to move forward with this variance without a stipulation, you can strike that from the approved stipulations.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes. That is correct.
I think you got their attention.
How to ask this question? In what dimension is this non-conforming? Do we have adequate width? I don't know if that sounds like an odd question. You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, it is non-conforming. Hold on, let me go to it a little bit. I will say I have not done the calculation if the
I'm not looking for
width
specific numbers, but
the frontage is at just under 80. And yes, which is below, so it's 85. How I was treating the non-conformity was because it's a little over 10,000 square feet for the overall. So that would be pertaining to 116. And that would be where the 35%, if it was a 15,000 square foot lot. But to that point, I have not done the calculations for this.
how far over the 25%?
Correct.
That amount of impervious area.
Yes, and this is just off the top of my head, but even with it being 85, because it's only off by a few feet, it would not be enough to accommodate the 43% that is there currently. But yes, it would help mitigate that if it were to the standard lot width. That is accurate. All right, thank you.
Murphy? How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Sean Murphy, 3282 Lee Street, Smyrna, Georgia, applicant on behalf of the owner, Mr. Gustavo Puga.
Sean, I don't know if Caitlin got to this or not, but we do have someone here. If language becomes an issue, we've got someone here that can help.
Yes, sir.
That if we need to. Okay. All right. Again, because there are four, I want to try to make sure we stay clear. What we're talking about is the coverage on the front yard, the impervious coverage on the front yard, allowing more than 25%. One of the stipulations is that the client agrees to remove that section of concrete, you guys are in favor of doing that? You agreed to do that to meet the
Yes, sir.
Yep.
If I may, I'll just kind of run through what we did and how we got here. Mr. Puga reached out to me to ask for some assistance because he obviously was cited for these conditions. And at first, I presented a plan that actually got rid of a little bit more concrete than what we presented ultimately. But he runs a business and uses the property pretty extensively for tools and things like that, which he stores in his shed. And he wasn't willing to get rid of his path of least resistance that he needs to be paved so he doesn't have a muddy front yard. So that's kind of how we arrived here at the plan you have today. We came to an agreement on what he felt comfortable removing, which is that entire section between the two front driveways, so to speak, and then a portion down the right side, which he feels like he can live with losing that. The other thing, as you were astute enough to notice, is that this is a non-conforming lot in both width and overall size. So we're starting off at a pretty significant deficit, so it's pretty hard to provide what most people would want to have in their yard in the way of driveways and sidewalks without going over the impervious totals. That said, we're aware that staff has made an additional request of removal for the steps and concrete on the north side of the house, and Mr. Puga has said that he's willing to accept that additional stipulation. So we're fine with that. And the other thing we've done to help mitigate this, which is propose a B&P in the backyard, which is basically essentially a dry well. It's a large hole in the ground lined with filter fabric and filled with gravel, to which Mr. Puga would be required to connect the downspouts from that new garage shed. They would drain directly to that device, and there would be an inspection port in that device for checking for leaves and debris. In addition, if you look closely, it may be hard to see on the plan, but it does require kind of regrading the surface of the rear of the lot to ensure that the water that runs off of the concrete and off of the roof of the main house will ultimately end up in a depression over top of that B&P, and therefore the B&P and the way it's designed is covered with river sand and sod, and a lot of that water will then infiltrate quickly into the ground. So not only will we capture directly the stormwater off of the shed, but we will get surface flow from some of the other hard surfaces on the property. So when he does this project, it's going to require pretty extensive work in that backyard and resodding and all that. So this is not without a significant expense to Mr. Puga to correct this issue. We will be, of course, sawing the concrete and jackhammering out the sections that we've indicated to be removed. And it's kind of hard to see on there with the hatching, but there's about a 5-foot strip on the southern side that gets cut off and removed so that we are not violating that setback on the side, in addition to removing the impervious surfaces.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions?
What's the nature of your business? What like you're using the shed to store tools and stuff?
All my tools and sometimes less materials.
For what? What do you build?
Well, I own like a remodeling company, and I just got all type of tools, hammer jacks, paint sprayers, all kind of stuff. And I own a lot of cars, you know, couple classic cars that I want to use the driveway too for that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming it followed the infiltrate 1 inch.
We only did water quality, which is what we've been typically doing. Yeah. The entire property flows from the west to the east, a little bit to the northeast. And the properties to the east are all commercial, and they are all fronted on South Cobb Drive. So
I recall
ultimately,
this area, South Cobb Drive.
I
Behind this property in between the commercial.
I think there's a lot of parking lots there. Is there a church behind you? Shop, yeah, there,
Bob Lane is, I think.
yeah, I can't speak to what the businesses are, but there's quite a bit of pavement. It's all commercial, and it ultimately will end up in the gutter of South Cobb Drive.
Got it.
I apologize because I don't know whether there are any curb inlets or anything on South Cobb. I didn't look at that.
If I remember this area, I think I don't mean to. I don't mean to drill down too much. I'm just.
I-
Is there something else we needed to consider? Absolutely nothing away of how thorough.
Yeah. I think there's a stream, I want to say, let me get my, south on Concord. So it must flow south down Concord, if I'm not mistaken. Because
South Cobb.
yeah, down South Cobb Drive, I'm sorry. In that apartment complex, then a stream crosses the road there underneath the road somewhere, so it's got to flow that way.
Satisfied me. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? No. All right. Thank you, guys. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against variance request V25-116, allow more than 25% impervious coverage in the front yard on land lot 344 at 2809 Sherwood Road, please come to the microphone at this time. Hearing none, I will go back to the 6 stipulations that are listed, and I think, Mr. Murphy, you had acknowledged that you understand those 6 stipulations and you guys agree to adhere to those?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sure, sure. Could we have the owner come up? Acknowledgement that he agrees to those stipulations as well? You understand the 6 stipulations that are listed in the variance request?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I understand.
Would you like to have,
A ver, dígale qué es, bueno, creo que entendí más o menos. Las 6, me está diciendo de las 6 estipulaciones que me pusieron, ¿verdad? Como remover el concreto, todo eso, y el hoyo atrás. Ok, eso sí.
Si podemos ver todo eso, entonces ellos aprueban lo que necesitan.
Ok, creo que sí entiendo eso, sí, de lo que dijeron, sí.
So he's confirming that he understands all stipulations.
thank you. Hearing no public input, we will entertain a motion.
5-116, 5% impervious coverage. As clarified.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that motion passes. Ready? Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-117. Reduce the southern side setback from 10 feet to 9 feet on land lot 344 at 2809 Sherwood Road. Sean Murphy is the applicant. Ms. Crowe, is there any additional background that you would like to share on 117?
Actually, yes, I would like to point out, so there is a 1 foot reduction for this, which in most circumstances, it could have been moved over and thus would not have required the variance. The reason that we are still supportive of this request is because this is already existing, and if it had been removed and replaced, we felt that the land disturbance increase would be more detrimental to the property and neighboring properties, and that is why we support this one.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Murphy, is there anything that you'd like to add in relation to this request?
No, staff was correct about that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Murphy? Public hearing, or if there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this request, you may do so at this time. Mr. Murphy, you and your client understand that the same 6 stipulations apply to this request as well?
Yes, sir.
You agree to adhere to those?
Yes.
Hearing no public comment, we will entertain a motion. Variance request V25-117, reduce the southern side setback from 10 feet to 9 feet or at 2809 Sherwood Road.
A motion to approve?
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote. That motion passes. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-118, increase the maximum impervious surface from 35% to 53.2%. Lot 344 at 2809 Sherwood Road. Sean Murphy is the applicant. Ms. Crowe, is there any additional information you'd like to share on this request?
Yes, now that we do understand that the applicant is agreeable to removing that additional square footage, what I would request from the board is, because this will also decrease the amount of impervious surface area, the new request will be from 35% to 48.1%. If this does move forward as approved, if we could make that note, it is to 48.1%. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy, background you'd like to share?
Nothing additional.
Since we are talking about the impervious surface, and since we have previously approved a variance request on 116 for impervious coverage, Ms. Hodges, are there changes to anything that you proposed that we need to clarify this morning as we are going through these requests?
Hi, Clara Hodges with the Engineering Department. With that additional reduction with the removal of the concrete on the northern side of the house, that does reduce the impervious surface, and therefore you may be able to reduce the size of that infiltration B&P in the back. That's not required, but that is an option if they would like to do so.
Okay. You understand that? Y'all can get together afterwards and clarify that? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, all right. Any questions?
Becca, I'm kidding.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Related to this request? Okay. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak for or against this request, please do so at this time. Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
5-118. 5% to the revised.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. In the event that I didn't ask, the same stipulations apply. You agree to adhere to those? On now. Variance request to the next item, which is V25-119, reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 25 feet on land lot 344, 2809 Sherwood Road, Sean Murphy, the applicant. Ms. Crowe, any additional information for this background?
Not for this item.
Murphy, is there anything you'd like to add related to this request?
Nothing I'd like to add, but I would like to ask staff a question. Assuming this gets approved today, do we need to submit for a permit? Or will the demo of the concrete and the BMP, are they considered landscaping and exempt from requiring a permit since it's less than 5,000 square feet? Will we have to have a separate permit, LDP, for that?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. So we actually already have a permit application in for the carport and the shed with third-party inspection results already submitted. The landscaping efforts that you talked about will be included in that permit, but that is correct. The permit, and that is one of the stipulations as well, is that permit must be obtained. And to kind of further clarify what Claire was saying, if you want to move forward with the existing plan you have, you are more than welcome to, but if you do want to reduce it, we'll need those revisions prior to permitting.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Murphy? This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak against this request, please do so at this time.
I motion to approve V25-119, a variance request to reduce the front setback from 30, are we on the right one? Yes. Kind of forgot where we were, 35 feet to 25 feet in land lot 344 at 2809 Sherwood Road, Sean Murphy, the applicant.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote. Thank you. We move on to variance request V25-013 to increase the allowable sign size on land lot 412 at 3376 South Cobb Drive. Florence Pool is the applicant. At the request of the applicant, I will entertain a motion to withdraw this request.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to withdraw the request. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously. Item P is variance request V25-109, allow encroachment into the city 75-foot impervious surface setback on land lot 525 at 3344 Dunn Street. Kelly Robinson is the applicant. There's a request to table this to the January 14th, 2026 board meeting. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
A motion.
Motion
And I second.
and a second. Please vote. Item Q, that motion passes. Item Q is variance request V25-110, reduce the front setback from 35 feet to 30.1 feet on land lot 525 at 3344 Dunn Street. Kelly Robinson is the applicant. Again, the request has been made to table this to the January 14th, 2026 License and Variance Board meeting. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously as well. Item R on the agenda is a variance request V25-111, reduce the northern side setback from 12 feet to 5 feet on land lot 525 at 33 Street. Kelly Robinson is the applicant. Again, the request is to table this to the January 14th, 2026 License and Variance Board meeting. Do I have a motion to that effect?
A motion.
Motion and a second. Please vote. Passes. Next item on the agenda, item S, is variance request V25-114, reduce the required parking spaces on land lot 412 at 3376 South Cobb Drive. Michelle Tefel is the applicant. This request, at the request of the applicant, she's asking this be withdrawn. I hear a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to withdraw. Please vote. That motion passes. Next item on the agenda is V25-115, allow gravel parking, land lot 412 at 3376 South Cobb Drive. Michelle Tefal is the applicant. Again, at the request of the applicant, they're requesting that this application be withdrawn. I hear a motion to that effect.
A motion.
I second.
Motion seconded. Please vote. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-120, allow accessory structure size above 25% on land lot 688 at 2000 Oakdale Court Ensign Ambrose is the applicant. At the request of the applicant, they are requesting to move this to the, or table to the 2026 License and Variance Board meeting. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
Second.
Second, please vote. That passes. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-121, allow a secondary structure on land lot 688 at 2000 Oakdale Court. Ensign Ambrose is the applicant. Again, at the request of the applicant, they're requesting this be tabled to the January 2026 License and Variance Board meeting. I have a motion to that effect.
A motion.
Motion and a second, and we'll vote for that. That motion passes. Next item on the agenda is variance request V25-122, reduce the driveway setback on land lot 688 at 2000 Oakdale Court. Ensign Ambrose is the applicant, again requesting to be tabled to the January 14th, 2026 License and Variance Board meeting. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I second.
Motion and a second, please vote. Item X, variance request V25-123, reduce the western side setback on land lot 688 at 2000 Oakdale Court. Ensign Ambrose is the applicant. Again, the request from the applicant is that we table this to January 14th, 2026, with License and Variance Board meeting. Hear a motion to that effect.
A motion.
I second.
Motion and a second, please vote. Item Y is variance request V25-124, reduce the street side setback on land lot 688, 2000 Oakdale Court. Ensign Ambrose is the applicant. At the request of the applicant, we will entertain a motion to table this to the January 14th, 2026 License and Variance Board meeting.
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Next item on the agenda is item Z. Variance request V25-125, reduce the accessory structure rear setback on land lot 688 at 2000 Oakdale Court. Ensign Ambrose is the applicant. At the request of the applicant, they would like to table to January 14th, 2026 of the License and Variance Board meeting minute. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I motion.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. That motion passes as well. Which should bring us back around to privilege license, alcohol license, owner agent change request, liquor, beer, and wine, pouring Sunday sales at 2728 Spring Road Southeast, Atlanta, Georgia. Mid-Atlantic LLC, doing business as Applebee's, number 88049, with Christian Lembick as agent. Is Christian present? How are you doing, sir? If you would step to the microphone, please. Let you crawl if that's necessary.
Huh?
I said, we'll let you crawl if that's necessary.
Fine. On some plantar fasciitis. I appreciate y'all letting me in. I just got off vacation and forgot about the meeting. My calendar went off an hour beforehand, and I live in Buford.
Oh, mercy. Well, glad you could make it in. Glad you could make it in. We just have a few questions.
Okay.
We want to, when we do things like this, we're already made aware that you've gone through, the background check has been completed, and we haven't had issues with that and screening of that. But we do like to make sure that the person that we're issuing these licenses to is experienced. So we would ask you, what is your experience in operating establishments like this that serve alcohol?
I've been in the business 20 plus years. I've actually held the Spring Road license for the last several years, but I'm well versed in Serve Safe Alcohol and Saber and all of that type of thing. So I hold many licenses around Atlanta.
With that, what measures have been put in place, or what measures will you put in place to ensure that we're not either over-serving or serving underage drinkers?
We card every guest that enters a building, regardless of how old they look or may look, and we put every team member and manager through extensive training on Serve Safe of Alcohol. It's requirement before they take over a store or they work a shift or anything. And if a pouring permit is required, they have to get that before we even start their training.
What measures, you said you ID everyone, what measures are in place to ensure that that's
We have them like sign a document every day before the shift starts, and it's just managers on the floor checking, making sure that's being followed and everything.
And what measures do you take to prevent overservice?
What measures do we take to prevent we have what's called like a third drink notification. After someone has 2 drinks, they notify the manager if they're going to try to order a third. And we look for signs. We call them no-way signs. And we go and sometimes discuss with the guest and see what their pulse is and everything. So that basically the team members are trained after somebody has more than 2 drinks. If they want to order a third, a manager will go over to the table.
Excellent. What days and hours do you anticipate that you'll be in the facility?
I'm an area director, so it varies. My schedule varies, but usually, once, twice a week, and my hours vary from opening to midday to late night, just depends.
What would you say the frequency of the training programs that you offer how often do those servers go through those training programs or refreshers?
They go through it before they get out of training, and then we require, like myself, I have to take Serve Safe Alcohol every 3 years, and we require that of all the management teams. We also go back through with each team member yearly and go back and recertify them as well.
Are there any questions?
I have 9 at the current time.
And geographically, from here?
I'm all over Atlanta. I've actually probably touched, out of 32 stores, I've oversaw 26 of them at one time or another.
You understand, in the city of Smyrna, the police serving alcohol seriously. They will be around to check to make sure that you guys are following proper protocols related in relationship to that.
Absolutely, we welcome it.
All right. Any other questions?
I make a motion to approve owner agent change request. Applebee's Restaurants Mid-Atlantic, LLC, DBA, Applebee's number 88049 with Christian
Lemke, correct.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Last item on the agenda, sorry that we've reached this point, is the approval of the minutes from the November 12th, 2025 License and Variance Board meeting. We have a motion to approve. That motion passes. Is there any other business to come before the License and Variance Board meeting this morning? Hearing none, we will move to